Hello, writers. My name is Tennyson E. Stead. I am a working screenwriter and a working script doctor, and welcome to The Right Stuff. I'm going to tell you a personal story which proved to be kind of pivotal in my career. And it was a job I didn't get paid for, funny enough. I'm not saying people should or shouldn't work for no money. I will say that I look at every project on its own merits in terms of the people that I'm working with and who I trust and who I want to build relationships with. And oftentimes wanting to work with good people is more of a driving factor than how much I'm getting paid. I've turned down projects where I am getting paid. I have, to date, I don't think ever turned down a project with someone I absolutely am driven to support. So there's a lot of stories in my history. But to set this all up, in 2013, I was helping a friend on the set of a web series. I was struck in the head with a sword. I suffered a massive traumatic brain injury, and for many years I wasn't able to walk that well. I would have tremors all the time. I was extremely disabled. My voice would fail me. I wouldn't have control of my vocal cords at certain points. It was a bad brain injury. Not that there are good ones. And in 2019, my financial situation had finally collapsed. I didn't receive any help from the company responsible until after an extended lawsuit, and that lawsuit did not produce much. Because in 2020 I just caved. And certainly that was my decision. But the point is this: by 2019, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, Ippy Looney, and I moved into their car, and we were living in parking garages around Los Angeles and showering and getting cleaned up at the 24-hour fitness, which is not an unheard of thing in Los Angeles. It happens. Lucinda Bruce is my producer and a very dear friend. Evan knew Lucinda before I did and introduced the two of us not long after we started dating. And Lucinda loves a couple of my screenplays and has admired me as a writer. And I think this was kind of the moment in our relationship when Lucinda realized that she could actually rely on me. There's details that may or may not still be protected by NDA, so I'm going to tread lightly here. But Lucinda was working on a project with a now defunct management and content development company. Lucinda and the rest of the development team had been getting strung along by the screenwriter for about at least half a year, waiting to see the rough draft. They had a pitch to investors in the first week of March, and this was the first week of February. Lucinda gets the script, and we talk all the time on WhatsApp. So she WhatsApps me and is like, would you mind giving me some quick turnaround coverage and letting me know where you think I am? And I read the script, and even on top of all the problems structurally that I'm always harping on this channel, the writing was a disaster. It was plain to see that this was a total disaster. And Lucinda then asks me, well, do you think you can fix it before March? And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I can. And Lucinda said, that's great. You've got a month. Take your time. And that's when I said, hold on. I do not have a month. I have a week. Because you and your team are going to have notes, and those notes are going to be more involved than you think. They always are. And we need to make sure that you're presenting the movie that you actually want to make to these investors. And Lucinda's like, don't rush it, that whole thing. And I said, I had been working on my craft in all the ways that we talk about for several years at this point. I've written at least 20 screenplays, maybe 30. by the time this conversation is happening. And number one, I know what it takes to write a screenplay, but number two, I know my workflow. When you find the action of a story, the creative part, in other words, comes from putting the characters together and creating the place where that action comes from. All the specificity in the action, all the impulses that you generate as you're writing a character out, all that stuff comes from the creative thing that you've built within yourself, the characters that you've built in your mind. But by the time you sit down and you start writing scenes, for the most part, the creative stuff is done, and you're just tapping into the things that you have, the things that you've created to let your characters choose their actions. You're following through by applying the motivation to the action and seeing what the characters do and writing it down. At that point, you're just trying to keep up. If you've done it correctly, if you have a strong structure and your story is built correctly, you don't have writer's block. And if you don't have writer's block, then you can keep writing. It really is at that point just a question of stamina. So I said, no, it's not going to be easy. I'm not saying it's going to be pleasant, but I can get this done in a week, and I'm going to do it because I know you're going to have those notes. And Lucinda's like, well, if you think it's best. And in a week's time, we were homeless. I was working at Starbucks the entire time. I managed to turn in the first draft of that film, and everybody was blown away. The team took a week, just like I said they would, to read it and discuss it. And they came back to me with comments to the effect of, this is fantastic. Now we know what we want. And so they asked for some structural changes. They wanted the story to be essentially less of a sports movie and more of a heist movie. And I told them that's a different action. Stealing something is different than winning something. It's a different movie because you're building different steps towards that action. They said, oh, no. We just need a couple scenes that have this and fewer scenes that have that. And I said, that's not what you need. You need every scene, the protagonist needs to be going into that scene, building their success in the efforts to take the thing that they're trying to take. This is 100% a different movie. It turns out I used 3 paragraphs from the old script, and they were descriptive paragraphs about the science fiction setting. Okay? So 1 week later, I handed in a completely different film. It's still February. And at that point, they said, wow, this is the movie we want to make. We have a couple of notes. We have a couple of thoughts. We spent the next 7 days picking through the script, making sure everything was cleaned up. That last week in February, we had to add a few locations to satisfy the financiers. There were a bunch of creative notes that everybody had, but it was that second draft that really brought the film together and satisfied everybody, gave everybody what they needed. And I don't think Lucinda had ever seen a writer do that before. And I know that a lot of the, I work as a script doctor. I work with writers all the time. People are consistently amazed when they give me a particularly challenging mission. I need this and this and this and this. And if the story were easy to write, they wouldn't be struggling. If bringing an active structure to the idea that they have was a simple, easy thing to do, then they wouldn't need a script doctor. But I take my time in the development process. I talk with people about what it is they actually need, and I find an action that delivers the story that they want delivered. And once I have that, and once I understand the scope of what I'm trying to do and how the protagonist is actually going about it, then it's just about being specific enough in the efforts of our characters to achieve their overwhelmingly challenging goals that the story starts to come to life. And that specificity is something that, having written 70 odd screenplays at this point, maybe 80, I can do in a week. And some clients find it alarming. They get the script and they're like, really? And it's like, it's why you hired me. Yeah, really, read it. There's been 1 or 2 projects that didn't land. And that's always going to happen. But I've also built a lot of relationships with professionals in this industry who I love and admire through my script doctor work, because I came in at a moment when they really needed help and they really needed support and they needed things to go right. And I delivered in ways that they didn't think was possible. And I did it in a time frame that made them feel very safe. And this project with Lucinda was the first time I ever saw that happen. And since that time, Lucinda's been relying on me pretty much as the key creative development person in her life. And now we're producing movies together. And there's projects taking flight. And I'm proud of the work that we're doing together now. And I'm proud of the fact that Lucinda supports the work that I'm doing in my career. And, you know, this is a story that Ippy Looney urged me to tell. I think from a craft standpoint, the lesson here is that if you work on your fundamentals and you develop those fundamentals into habits, then as you get out of your own way, you can rely on your habits to do the lion's share of the work for you, and that work is going to be really, really good because your habits are really, really good. And you're going to be able to jump in and save productions. You're going to be able to do things that people don't think you can do or that anyone can do. And you're going to start developing a reputation with producers and with actors and with other creatives as the collaborator who shows up and delivers the show that everybody wanted to make in the first place, right at the time when everybody thought that show had already slipped through their fingers. That, to me, is the lesson. But on the other hand, like, writing a screenplay in a week has become, for me, kind of a party trick. I think there are a lot of people that are seriously impressed with the work that I do and the timetable that I do it on the first time that they see it. And, you know, if those people keep working with me, they come to rely on my ability to deliver that. And all I can say is that I'm not getting cheaper. I'm going to get more expensive. To me, you know, this is a product of developing your craft into a finely shaped tool. And the more you develop strong habits as a creative, the more the inherent challenges of this work are going to resolve themselves for you. So hopefully this channel helps you do that. Thank you for showing up. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. I look forward to learning with you.